Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. The decision of the Indian Defence Forces to buy a majority of the equipment made in the country shows the capacity of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, said Prime Minister Narendra Modi while inaugurating the Defence Expo 2022. With an aim to give impetus to the defence sector, India's biggest ever Defence Expo is being held in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. This is the 12th edition of the event and has been organised under the theme Path to Pride. Speaking at the inaugural event, the Prime Minister spoke about the transformational journey the Indian defence sector has been witnessing, how India has made its place despite the monopoly of a few manufacturing companies in the global defence sector. However, in the same breath, he added that there's still a long way to go as expectations from India are now huge. We will have to accelerate the pace of progress towards becoming self-reliant, reiterated the Prime Minister. So how are we increasing our preparations in this regard? What have been our priority areas towards making India Atmanirbhar in defence, at the same time enhancing our military prowess? And how do events like the Defence Expo help in realising this potential? All of this and much more in perspective today with an eminent set of panellists who are joining us on the programme. So pleased to welcome Mr. S.P. Shukla, Chairman, Mahindra Defence Systems and Mahindra Aerospace, Major General Jagatbir Singh, retired. He's a distinguished fellow, the United Service Institution of India, and Mr. Sunil Mishra, Director General, Society of Indian Defence Manufacturers. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program today on Sansad TV. Mr. Shukla, let me begin the program today with you. You know, this is the 12th edition of the Defence Expo. What, according to you, makes this one particularly unique and special? Let's begin with that.
That one is actually very easy to answer. This is the first time we have a DefExpo which has been completely dedicated to only Indian manufacturers. It is about Make in India. All previous DefExpos, and I have had opportunity to attend several, they had a mix of foreign OEMs and Indian OEMs together. This time, we were able to make this exhibition viable with the sheer participation of Indian industry, large, medium, and small. And I think that itself is a huge achievement.
Okay, Mr. Mishra. So that was Mr. Shukla's perspective on what makes the DefExpo unique and special. But how do you look at it? Does it mark an emphatic beginning of a new future for the Indian defence sector?
It does. If we look at the previous DefExpos, we were talking about increasing the share of Indian manufactured products in defense procurement. It was not very long ago that we talked about 40% being made in India and 60% being imported. It changed to 50-50 3 years ago. And I'm very happy to say that we have just announced the goal of 68% domestic and only 32% being imported. So that is a major landmark that Make in India is now more than double of imported equipment in government procurement. Then comes the second point. Within the domestic procurement sector, private sector used to have about 10% earlier. In just 5 years, share of private sector has grown to 25%. So actually, if we see, private sector procurement has given an impetus to overall domestic manufacturing. As a result, domestic manufacturing has reached 68%. And I'm sure this trend will continue in the time to come.
Okay. Mr. Mishra, you know, this has been a significant transformational journey, particularly in the defence sector that we have witnessed over the last couple of years. If you could help us and our viewers understand some of the significant path-breaking reforms that have taken place over the last few years to have actually brought us to this stage wherein from being the largest defence importer today, now we are a net exporter. Mr. Mishra.
Yeah, thank you, Teena. It's very interesting to see the tectonic changes which are happening in the defence manufacturing space in our country. To begin with, let us first examine what was the situation about 10-15 years back. 10-15 years back, a large number of equipments were being imported. Some of them were being made by defense PSUs and the contribution of Indian private sector, which certainly has reached a significant level of excellence in engineering technologies, metallurgy, etc., was still very insignificant. In the last 5-7 years, the policy framework has undergone a major change, and it has happened with the singular agenda which has been stated by the government that we want to make Indian defense manufacturing strong and make India Atmanirbhar in its defense needs. There have been now 4 lists which have been promulgated by Ministry of Defense, saying that these things these equipments which are listed in those lists cannot be bought from foreign OEMs or from outside. They have to be developed and produced in the country, and only then the needs of the services can be satiated. There is another list, perhaps, where on a special case-to-case basis, certain things can be allowed to be bought from outside if they are not available in India. Now, this stated objective has had a significant impact on 2 things. One, it required the policy framework to be made more robust, more industry-friendly, which has been done in the recent past. Indian industry has also risen to take up the challenge and meet the aspirations of the nation. India has also been spending a large amount of money and funds on R&D, which was primarily done by DRDO as the lead agency. But now what has happened is a certain percentage of the defense R&D budget is earmarked for private industry also. So these are certain changes which are definitely going to make us Atmanirbhar and take us on the path of self-reliance as far as defense production is concerned and the needs of our services are.
Certainly. So you've taken us, very well through this tectonic shift, the transformational change that the Indian defense sector has undergone over the last few years. General Singh, what is your opinion? Because with the fact that the changing geopolitics, with the kind of security threats that India has been facing, it's imminent that we have to, always keep enhancing our capabilities and not to depend solely on global supply chains, because we've seen the kind of disruptions these can have in times like these, when we've been hit by the COVID pandemic, when we've been hit by this aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine war. So we are, of course, moving towards this path of self-reliance. But how do you look at this path to pride now? So from that, clarion call that the Prime Minister gave of becoming Atmanirbhar, today, few years down the line, we talk about the path to pride, wherein a lot of our companies are actually making in India and making for the world.
So you've raised some very pertinent questions, by your this introduction. So I'd like to say a couple of things. Firstly, absolutely right. You need to have capability built within India itself. Only then we can say that we've totally transformed and we're not dependent on any foreign country, foreign vendor, foreign supplier for our, immediate fighting needs. However, if I take you back in history, you'll well recall that at the time of the 1965 conflict, sanctions were imposed on India by the US, India and Pakistan. And at that time, we were dependent on the West for our military equipment. So we had to look elsewhere. And we, of course, took the route towards looking towards the Soviet Union at that time, whereas Pakistan went towards China. Any country will not part with its latest technology, latest equipment. They will give you certain equipment which is not their cutting edge equipment. And they also have the thing of raising them. I'd like to tell all our viewers that there are certain steps involved in defense industry, defense manufacturing, ultimately to come to the user. So the first thing is you have to have what was touched upon very briefly by eminent panelists. You have to have certain amount of research. Now he very correctly got about that this research and designing was initially done by the DRDO. So you have to allow the private sector also to come into this research, because abroad a lot of the research is not done in government controlled laboratories, government controlled organizations. So you have to look towards research. And after you look towards research, then you develop what is feasible within your budgets. And then you go in for manufacturing. And after that, you have the quality checks. Now, it's not only the equipment, it's also the things that are required along with the equipment. So you can get your own equipment in as far as some subsystem or some gun is concerned, but you also have to be able to manufacture the ammunition to fire that, the missiles to fire that.
Yes.
So all these things have to be looked into, and this is a welcome step, and it's a long needed step. We need to be self-reliant as far as our defense industry is concerned. As far as our defense forces are concerned, it's most essential.
Absolutely. Mr. Mishra, so coming back to the important event that's taking place in Gandhinagar, it's perhaps the biggest defense expo that's taking place in Asia, and the fact that it's only for the Indian manufacturers, that's perhaps makes it very, very unique and special, as we've discussed earlier on. What are the kind of expectations from this huge event that's taking place? The Prime Minister himself has addressed the inaugural ceremony, and the kind of thrust he's once again laid upon the fact that today India is not just producing for itself, it is producing for several countries now who we are exporting to, and the expectations are only growing by the day.
Yeah, so Teena, it's very interesting. I'm sitting right here at Gandhinagar at DefExpo. Two things are happening. There's a exhibition in Gandhinagar, and there is a number of defense-related seminars which are happening. Path to Pride is the tagline, and I must tell you that I am feeling so proud since yesterday, since the exhibition has been opened. I see an array of defense equipment which has been made in India. There are guns, we have made submarines, we have made light combat aircraft, we had made recently, and it has been inducted in the service Prachand, which is the helicopter which flies at very high altitudes. It is an attack helicopter. We are definitely making all type of weapons of conventional warfare, ammunition. We are also, as this country is now making drones, anti-drones. It is in artificial intelligence. I see so many startups, so many bright minds in this exhibition today. I have come out of a seminar which had a lot of startups. Youngsters who are doing it, it is seen to be believed as to what kind of work they are doing. I personally feel that Indian mind is one of the most fertile and the cerebral asset of this country. When it is provided an environment where it is properly tapped, it can do wonders. And I think that the youngsters are on that path because they are getting that kind of environment as far as innovations are concerned, and a lot of things are on display which are purely made in India. And I see in future not incremental change, but Indian industry and Indian startups will pole vault Indian defense manufacturing scene in times to come.
You know, as you take us through the diverse events that are taking place in Gandhinagar at the moment, and the fact that, that there are youngsters who are also there, I'm sure each of our Indian viewers must have been, must have grown a few inches taller with pride, as the tagline also says, "Path to Pride." But Mr. Mishra, also very quickly, the fact that it reflects a new India where youngsters have a major role to play, the startups, the MSMEs have begun to play a key role now when it comes to domestic manufacturing in defense. So for the startups, for the MSMEs, for the young innovators, what is the kind of atmosphere there at the DefExpo 2022?
See, for the youngsters, they don't come with a legacy of the past like us, who have seen, and we are slow to change. They are raring to go. I can see that that spirit in our next generation. Who many of them have studied abroad and have come back. Many of them studied in IITs and engineering colleges and are working on specific items, specific uh, problems which have been thrown open to them by the services, and they are working on that. I also see a huge amount of opportunity emerging out of the DPSUs, seven of them which are new, which have been carved out of the Ordnance Factory Board, and they need to be more efficient. They need to make their supply chains more efficient. So there's a huge opportunity waiting for the Indian small and medium scale industries, even micro industries, who can be part of this whole journey of indigenous manufacturing of defense equipment in the supply chain. Indian private sector, number of companies who are getting into this business of defense manufacturing is increasing. I travel quite a bit in different parts of the country and meet a lot of industry and entrepreneurs. And the kind of interest and enthusiasm which I see in them, the curiosity, first of all, as to what is happening in this space, how I can become part of this journey, is there everywhere. And the pie is very big. I am sure that in the times to come, we used to send our money outside to buy products from outside of India. We will spend it here inside the country and create more jobs. That is another aspect of
Absolutely.
indigenous.
So intent and innovation are, what have given a boost to our domestic manufacturing is what you're saying. But General Singh, at the same time, when we look at these aspects and when we talk about the growth in the defense sector, we also have to look at the modernization aspect, and particularly keeping in view the kind of security threat India faces from two nuclear-powered adversaries on two fronts. So at the same time, while enhancing our capabilities and moving towards domestic manufacturing, what is the kind of thrust that we are putting on modernization?
Absolutely right. The threat now is not only from China and Pakistan. The threat that we are witnessing today is increasing collusivity between China and Pakistan. So you're actually witnessing what you call a two-front, and then you have terrorism to add to that two and a half front, hybrid warfare. So you have this threat. But at the same time, I'd like to caution you that, are we here to keep pace with China's advance, or are we here to keep pace with Pakistan's advance? And what is our threat perception, and how do we challenge that? How do we overcome these two? Because if you go back again in history, one of the reasons which has been attributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union was the spiraling defense expenditure. So that's one issue which needs to be kept in mind. I don't think we can constantly keep pace with China and their advancements, because they are far ahead of you in certain aspects regarding their economy as well as their technology. But at the same time, we should have that much capability that we are able to deter China from taking any action. And I think that is what is we have to look at. And for doing that, and as the panelists very well brought out, that we have a large amount of talent which is there in the country. So we have to nurture this talent, utilize this talent, encourage the talent. And at the same time, when you do this, you should be willing to accept failures in certain, invest your money and time and resources with them. And only then we'll be able to grow and we'll make a name for ourselves as far as the Indian defense industry is concerned. And as was brought out earlier, that earlier everything was restricted in the hand of the DPSUs and the ordnance factories or the DRDO and such like structures. But now the private sector has come in and they are playing a major role in the growth of this industry.
That's
so
right.
that is extremely important.
That's right. That's a very important point that you've raised. And let me go back again to Mr. Mishra. I remember earlier on during our discussions, Mr. Mishra, when we spoke about the challenges in the growth of Indian defense manufacturing, some of these points were mentioned more often. The fact that there was too much delay, that it was public sector driven, the fact that, there used to be long gestation periods, also lack of critical technologies that were available to us. Some of these have been addressed, but there are some challenges that are still persisting and that we need to overcome if we are, looking at the kind of path to progress that we've been talking about. So, as someone who is in the manufacturer's, side and looking at all of these challenges that still exist, what do you think is the need of the hour, both from the policymaker side as well as the manufacturers?
See, Teena, as far as the policy side is concerned, I am sure that a lot has been done. Good policies are in place. The nature of the industry is such that an industry does not and cannot perhaps become viable only on domestic orders, because the investments are more and the numbers of equipment which are needed are not as much to make that investment viable. This is one major impediment, or this is something which the industry has to overcome by making exports, and they're doing that. Private industry, if you put the policies right, if you give the environment which is right, it can find its own way. And I'm sure the impact of the policies, as we have seen in the past, when liberalization happened, it was started in 91. The effects we could only see somewhere around 2000. So the effects of the changes in policy which have been made, the rising of the Indian private sector to the occasion, and this is an evolving space, and we will definitely be seeing very transformational changes in coming few years.
Okay. So, General Singh, I'll come back to you for the last comment. Two parts of what Mr. Mishra has said. One, the fact that we have tried to, create an environment which is suitable for the manufacturers, create a robust ecosystem for them, for the domestic manufacturers in the country. Do you see any lacuna in that? And the fact that a few days ago, we heard General Manoj Pandey say he is quite confident that our domestic weapons will win us future wars if India faces any such threat. How convinced are you that with the manner in which we are aggressively now cutting down on imports and giving a lot of thrust to the domestic manufacturing, we are going to be future ready to face all kinds of adversities that face us?
The Army Chief has said is absolutely correct. I don't think anybody can doubt what he said or, question what he said. And as I mentioned earlier, the way ahead is to build your own capabilities. Right. Unless you do that, you cannot do it. But at the same time, there have been certain problems as far as the Indian equipment has been concerned. And one of that you have absolutely categorically stated is the long gestation once the item are delivered. Now, both these have to be overcome. And I'm sure once these are overcome, and they will be overcome once you create that atmosphere and you create the environment and you assure them of certain, to invest in research, and then will be willing to carry out manufacturing, and then he'll want to look at certain assured orders. And I think this is the process. And I feel that all these three people must work in unison, because you have to look at the aim of the country.
That's right.
And what is the aim of the country? I think it's been very well spelled out by the Honorable Prime Minister. So be it the people who are carrying out the research, be it the people who are carrying out the manufacturing, or be it the end user, all three have to be in unison. Now, the user cannot ask for something that we cannot manufacture here, or ask for something in a price that it cannot be manufactured. So all these things have to be kept in mind. But at the same time, I'd like to caution everybody that, when you say you're manufacturing something, there are still a certain component within that major equipment which is imported for certain reasons which you don't have over here. So that technology also you have to have access to and get that technology. Only then you'll be able to move ahead. For example, I can just give you an example. When you say you have a tank manufactured in India, which is the Arjun tank, you have to check where the site is coming from and where the engine came from.
That's right. So that's a very important point that you've cautioned against, General Singh. The fact that we have made significant progress, but there are certain challenges that still persist, as we have spoken in the last round, both you and Mr. Mishra have cited, which we have to overcome with time. Gradually, it's just been a couple of years, we've made this kind of progress with the intent, with the right kind of innovation and the young minds at work. We are hopeful that these challenges will also be overcome with time. So that having been said, I'll have to wind up the program. Thank you to both of you for joining us on Sansad TV and putting things into perspective for us and our viewers. And thank you to you viewers as well for your time. That's it from us on this edition of Perspective. I'll see you same time tomorrow now. You take good care of yourselves. Keep watching Sansad TV.